Welcome back to the Business Leaders of America podcast, where business leaders come to share their advice and journeys to success with existing and emerging leaders of America. Now, here's your host, Dylan Bloyd.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Business Leaders of America podcast. Today, I'm joined by Marc Pitman, the founder and CEO of Concord Leadership Group, where he has spent the past 2 decades helping leaders, executives, and organizations develop more authentic and effective leadership styles. Over the course of his career, Marc has coached more than 130 CEOs, executives, directors, and founders through some of the most challenging periods in modern business history, including the dot-com crash, 9/11, the 2008 recession, and the COVID-19 pandemic. He has also presented training and keynotes to more than 27,000 participants across North America, Europe, Mexico, and New Zealand, while developing the Quadrant 3 leadership framework, a leadership development approach focused on helping leaders grow through self-awareness, authenticity, and adaptability rather than imitation. Marc is also the author of multiple books, including The Surprising Gift of Doubt, which explores how uncertainty and self-doubt can actually become powerful tools for leadership growth. In this conversation, we'll talk about the evolution of leadership development, why so many leaders struggle with confidence and authenticity, how organizations can develop future leaders, and what the future of leadership may look like in a world increasingly shaped by AI and rapid change. Marc, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad to have you on. And, Marc, so for people who may not know your story yet, what originally led you into leadership development and coaching?
That's a really good question. And I'd have to say it must have been my parents. I must have had some wiring for this too. But I came from a really weird family where I had schoolwork because I went to school. And then I had schoolwork because I was a pitman. So my parents assigned me schoolwork like Dale Carnegie and Norman Vincent Peale and Florence Littauer and Peter Drucker. I had to read these things, and we had books of the month and tapes of the week that they were part of a program they had, and so we listened to their tapes, and we also got the Norman Vincent Peale, I think it was, had the library. Some of the other people will remember it too. It was a something library. Something Conant that had all these self-help things. And
Yes.
so I grew up listening to people that did this leadership development thing. And I would go to they'd take us to the seminars and rallies and to the big coliseums. And it was interesting I just got inspired to see thousands of people being impacted because of a story on stage. And so that's where at 16, I committed to not being dependent on one income source only, because I just heard all these people. And these people were saying things like, I wish I had dreamt bigger.
Yeah.
I wish, when I had written my dollar goals, I wish I'd had an extra zero because I've reached them and I didn't know I could. And I bet I could have reached that one too. I wish I had had a bigger list of things I want to do in my life. So that was kind of the milieu that I was brought up in as I was going through school. And that I always want to help people be their best. So it just seemed the most obvious thing to go into.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that your parents did that because, I try to do things different, a little abstract with my kids as well. There was someone a while back who I listened to a podcast, and he was talking about how when he was 10 years old, not to get too long-winded, but his buddy had earned $10 for doing chores, right? And so he's like, man, I'm going to ask my parents if I can do that. So he runs home, and the guy tells him, or his parents tell him, no, we're not going to pay you to do your chores. That's part of a thing that we need to do as a family. But if you read this book and do a book report, we'll pay you $10, and it needs to make sense. You can't make it up. And so by 16, 17 years old, he was actually doing speaking engagements across different countries. It completely changed his life because of that. Yes, because he was like, I was obsessed with money. So I was doing book report after book report, and obviously became very intelligent, right?
I was only getting a penny a page,
right.
$10 for a book. Holy cow.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. I did try that with my daughter, but I think she was a little bit too young and was just like, yeah, I'm not doing that. That doesn't matter to me. I'd rather go outside.
So I don't know if this would speak to your family, but my sister cheated the system by getting a Bible that had side-by-side translations, and she still got a penny per page, even though she was only reading half a page. Totally played the system.
Yeah. Thinking outside the box, though. That's awesome. Yeah.
And it was one of those sibling things of, I wish I had thought of that.
Yes, exactly. Too late, right? Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Didn't tell you till after the fact, right?
No, I couldn't figure out how she was cruising through. Yeah. Well, so my dad also had these complex charts. So every vacation we went on, my sister and I had the feeling that we were contributing to the vacation. Now, being a parent, I realized, wow, that was for our training and to get some stuff done in the house, but it wasn't really because we were adding financially, but we were earning poker chips. There were certain jobs that earn a certain color poker chip, and then they could be translated into money. And to get to a trip, we had to do a certain number of things. And so setting goals and seeing goal accomplishment was definitely something that they did as well, now that I think about it.
Man, yeah, no, that's amazing. Especially those are such important tools to have growing up because usually you don't learn those until later down the road, right? So to have those tools already as a child is amazing. Oh, that's great. So, Mark, you coached through, like I mentioned in the intro, dot-com crash, 9/11, 2008 recession, COVID. What patterns do you consistently see in leaders who navigate, uncertainty well?
They're comfortable with ambiguity. One of the scariest things I consistently see, and the most understandable thing, so it's scary and understandable, is leaders that want the playbook. They want to know exactly, it's kind of, I was joking about it as being a AAA triptych that we used to get back in the day, these little narrow books that had every turn was the next page, or MapQuest, printing out your MapQuest directions.
Yes.
And there's a real part of it, I think, is because of the way when we're younger, people are giving us that. They're telling us how to do the chore. They're telling us how to do the homework. They're telling us how to make the play on the field. And as we get older and more into life, there's less and less of that. And so the people that are comfortable with the ambiguity, and also they take total responsibility and ownership, but they don't feel like it's all on them. There's an interesting tension in leadership where you are responsible, and that can get misunderstood by people. In our early career, we do the work and we get graded on how we do the work, and that's how we get paid. But as a leader, it's the work gets done through other people. So it feels weird because it's like a group project and you're not the one contributing.
Yeah.
But you're coordinating. And so being comfortable not having all the answers, not knowing how it's going to happen, but also being comfortable making the hard calls and making decisions to go forward, knowing that you might be wrong. But this is the direction we're going to take anyway.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And do you see people really struggle with that, and like maybe leadership's not for me because of the fact that they don't like having to be, all the weight feels like it is on their shoulders. They're having to make those hard decisions because as a leader, even when you're entry level versus being in there for years and years and years, everyone looks to you like you should have all of the answers. But even those executive leaders don't have all the answers, right?
Right. Well, I was going to say, I still wonder, maybe leadership's not for me. I've been doing this. Yeah, it's not, I mean, but it's life. I mean, that's the thing so as my wife and I teach leadership, it's influencing others. It's not a title. It's not necessarily positional authority. And so life requires an ability to understand and speak the dialect of the people you're working with, an ability to have nuance, and a big ability to see the goal is still the goal, but the path may change as we get there. And that's not cheating. That's not bad. That's not because we're less than. It could be that we're taking more time than needs to be taken, but it could be also that happens to be the path to that goal. It's just not the path that we wrote on paper.
Right, right. Yeah, no, totally understand. And, I was doing research on you and looked at kind of the 4-quadrant leadership, right? And so speaking of starting, in the beginning of leadership versus, seasoned leaders, can you break down what each quadrant kind of represents in that 4 quadrants of leadership and how leaders typically move through those stages over time?
Yeah, sure. So for everybody listening, you can think of this as a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. Please, if you're driving, don't write this down, but if you're not driving, feel free to think about it. Yeah, imagine with me, if you will. So the vertical, so it's just 4 boxes. The vertical axis is your confidence axis. You can have high confidence at the top, and then you're really unsure at the bottom. The horizontal axis is where you get your inputs, where you're taking your cues. Are you taking them externally, or are you listening to the internal? And we start in quadrant 1, where it's high confidence external cues. You're given a title of leader or given responsibility for a project, and you just feel great. I can do this. Somebody believes in me, or I've believed in me, and finally somebody sees it. So you start doing the thing, and I call that the observe quadrant, because that's where you do what you've seen all the other leaders in your life do. Your parents, your teachers, or you do what you choose to not do what you've seen them do because you didn't like the leaders So it's a both and, but it's all based on the other person. The problem with that is, and most people listening will be able to appreciate this, it doesn't work for you the way it worked for them. And a classic example is an introvert leader following an extrovert. The extrovert, management by walking around, get energy from having no agenda, love to have ideas, love to talk off the top of their head. And this new introvert manager comes in and leader comes in and is drained by that. It's really destabilizing. They want some sort of agenda. They want to know what to expect. And it feels wrong to them because that's not how the leadership has been done before in this particular role. So your confidence goes down. You go to Quadrant 2, which is the experiment quadrant, which is where most leaders spend their life. They look at what's broken with me, what's wrong with me, and they look externally to see what can I do to fix it. What are the things I need to do? Is it a certification? Is it a new class? Is it a new degree? Is it a new conference I need to go to? Or is it new peers I need to have? And they're still looking externally, but the good news is they're learning, which is great. The bad news is they feel like they're lurching from near miss to near miss. Like the company, the people that hired them, their team is going to find out, I really don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. And it's going to be awful. They're going to call me a fraud and everything will be done. It'll be all over.
Yes.
So that's where many people stay. And that self-doubt can be crippling. What I love about coaching and what I've seen with the leaders that I've been able to work with is that sometimes that self-doubt becomes just flips the switch within the leader of saying, I can't be all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be that bad. Maybe, just maybe, I consistently don't get this thing that everybody else seems to get and understand because I see a different perspective.
Yeah.
Or maybe my team responds differently because our team is part of a voice that needs to be heard in the sector. We're injecting something fresh, a fresh perspective into this. Mm-hmm. That's quadrant 3, where you start analyzing what is this about me? What's my hardwiring? How do I think about my mission, my goals, my vision, the stories I tell about myself, the stories we tell about our team. And as you learn those objective languages, the objective language to those very personal things, you start getting more confident because you realize the introvert can say, you know what, I just need an agenda. I just like to know what's coming, and that's going to be the expectation from now on. And they don't have to say, I don't feel right about this, or it doesn't have to sound like lessening authority at all. It's just, no, working with me, this is one of the things you're going to do is we'll have a set agenda, and I expect you to come prepared. And as you get feeling that way, your confidence rises to quadrant 4, which I call the focus quadrant. That is, focus was a hard word because we're still on the planet with billions of human beings like ourselves. So it's not nirvana. It's not necessarily even comfortable, but you realize, oh, there is a map. The people that were looking for the playbook couldn't find it, but now they realize they have a map and they know, do I need to copy somebody? Do I need to learn something new? Do I need to look internally and to see, why is this always tweaking me, or why is this not lining up with everybody else? And so that gives them the confidence. It's almost like having an internal gyroscope where they can still kind of keep some sort of level, even with all the ground shifting around.
Right. In that fourth quadrant, are they still experiencing imposter syndrome to an extent? Because obviously, like second and third quadrants, kind of where you're possibly even the first, but where like you said, your confidence is high at the first quadrant, but second, you're really second guessing, you're walking on eggshells. But when it comes to the imposter syndrome, do you still see that even in that fourth quadrant as they kind of escalate?
That's a really good question. I would say yes. The people that I deal with don't ever feel like they've arrived. They feel like they're arriving, and it's sort of like an airplane coming up to the gate, but the gate's not coming out to meet them, so they still can't take off their seatbelts. So what I see though is that they're also some of my clients have also said, I'm at quadrant 4 here, but this other place in my life, I'm in quadrant 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And so I think that I love that aspect of it's a living dynamic system, and it just gives you a construct to figure out where you're at, because if you know where you're at, you can ask different questions, and there's nothing wrong with being in. It's not like quadrant 2 is better than quadrant 3 or quadrant 1. It's just, it is where you are, and you can learn really well to how to be in that quadrant while you're there. But I think imposter syndrome, I think you learn to quadrant 3 gives you the space. In quadrant 2 and 1, the inner critic is right there meeting up with you and sounding so right, so logical, so crippling.
Yes.
By quadrant 3, you're starting to build a little bit of space to question. And you're in quadrant 4, you've developed that muscle of, I see that criticism, but let me just pause before I act on it or before I agree with it. Maybe there's something different here. So that can be one of the differences with quadrant 4.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you see people revert from quadrant 4 back down? Because like you said, it is like a living dynamic, right? So shifts in the company, shifts in like different aspects of the company. Do you see them kind of revert back sometimes?
Yeah, that's an interesting word, because revert to me seems like a bad thing, like going
Right,
down a
right.
grade in school. But yes, I can, because a personal story is when I turned 45 10 years ago. I felt like I knew the stuff I was doing was good. I knew objectively I've been doing internet or email marketing since 1999. I knew this was good. I had just done a really good, like something that would help my clients, something that should get the orders in, and it was crickets.
Yeah.
And the way I described it was like I was playing checkers and I had just done a triple jump and I felt really good about it. But when I looked down, the board was now Settlers of Catan. The checkers moves didn't matter anymore. So yeah, we can definitely feel like unexpectedly go to a different quadrant than we were in, just because the world's constantly changing.
Yeah.
People that are, the older generation's always complaining about the younger generation, but until we realize that we're now the older generation. And so
Right.
it's sort of like, there's just, things are always in flux. I feel like it's more so now than ever before, but I'm an ancient history nerd, and every generation has felt like this is the time of really advanced change.
Right.
So,
Yes.
So yeah, I do think that people can go back, and I think that hopefully knowing the full map helps give them pause of, okay, what is it? Why do I feel like I need to get another degree?
Yes.
Is it just for me? Fine, that's totally legit. Or is it for them, so that it's on my resume and people can see these letters after my name or before my name? Those aren't bad things, but it's just remembering, why are we doing this again? Before you commit to something can be a really good, helpful. Oh, the world's changed, or
Yes.
the culture's changed, or business has changed. Because we get so used to doing our thing
You're right.
that we sometimes forget to take a perspective, just a view of what's going on around us, and realize that, as we're seeing in the time of this recording, entire industries are being wiped out.
Yeah.
Not needed anymore.
Yeah.
And they had been seen as, cornerstones of culture before.
Yes.
I think of, in my time, travel agents.
Yes.
It used to be you never really, especially as a business person, you always had to have a travel agent that would know your what your preferences were and everything.
Right.
And now they keep saying LLMs will help us do that. I was trying yesterday. My LLM was more vague and kind of giving me a lecture as opposed to telling me exactly. I was like, no, I have status in these places.
Yeah.
This is where I'm going on these dates. So I still hadn't figured that one out yet.
Right.
But I was still playing there.
Right.
So,
Yes. No, that's amazing. Yeah. You're right. Things are definitely changing, and kind of think of like the mindset of your quadrants. It's also comes with the development of it, right? So we can help these leaders out, right? So you've said, leadership isn't taught, but people are often just thrown into it sometimes in their organizations, right? So what are organizations getting wrong when developing new leaders?
that presumes that they are developing new leaders.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I call the question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that the question's right. No, but I think a lot of the times this is okay. I was going to say this off the top of my head, but this is also informed by masters in organizational leadership and decades of coaching. I think we're moving so fast and we have so much coming at us that when we see someone that seems competent, beyond just fogging a mirror, but competent, like they do something well, and we promote them, we feel we're giving them an honor. They feel like they're getting an honor, but we don't create that space to realize, oh, wait, this is changing the game for them. Whether it's now having to learn how to delegate so that they're not micromanaging, or whether it's learning how to manage managers, or how to see in the future, not just do what's going on now, but see the implications of those on the culture of the organization. Those are all things that are very hard to create space for. And there's a lot of pressure to not, because that's seen as friction, slowing down the process. We could be going faster if we didn't have to do all this education stuff. So I think there's a lot of pressure against leadership development, despite decades of academic research that show that if you educate your leaders, it's the best investment you can make, because they will actually take less time to do things. They'll do it more confidently. Employee morale will go up because they know that there's a pathway to do this. There was a construction company here near me that had a colleague of mine went over and worked with them. They realized they were losing, they had a churn in their employees, and they thought it was just construction. They found out that their employees didn't realize that they had a pathway to grow in this company.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they hired her to create a leadership development program, it was in part to say, look, like one story I remember is a guy was here in Greenville and was moving to Raleigh. So he gave his notice because he was going to go to the next state over. And fortunately, the person that was his supervisor had the wherewithal to say, are you leaving the company, or are you moving, or do you really want to leave? Because we have an office in Raleigh. Did you not know that? We could actually move you, like you could stay with us. And so having those opportunities increases morale, reduces turnover, unwanted turnover. Some turnover you want, like some people you don't want to stay with you, but the unwanted turnover, the leadership development can definitely help.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And, early in my career, I think this is a different, like where it's different for different organizations, of course, but when you come in as an early leader, like you do sometimes need the handheld a little bit, to an extent, right? And so this is not to get too long-winded or go into story time, but I experienced it very early in my career where my superior basically told me, he's like, hey, you're going to work days just because I was going to be a night shift supervisor. So he tells me, hey, you're going to work on days just so you can get a feel for it a little bit. I'm like, okay, understood. He's like, about a month or two. I'm like, all right. One day goes by. He's like, hey, actually, we're just going to streamline this. We're going to get you to nights. We're going to get you on there, and I'm going to work with you for a month. I'll be there with you, holding your hand. I'm like, all right, awesome. That sounds good. 3PL, I knew logistics, I knew 3PLs, but at the same time, I wasn't very, very confident in it, especially their processes, right? And so gets there one night he spends with me, and then he's like, hey, I got to get back to days, I think you're going to do great. And I'm like, speaking of, thinking you're not knowing how to do things his way, and he's like, well, make it your own. But at the same time, I didn't even know how to make it my own.
Yeah.
I was like, I have no idea what's going on. And so
I don't even have a template to start from.
Yeah, exactly. So that Quadrant True, I lived there. I was there for sure, had no clue of where to take my, the team, how to be better. It took me a long time, and I was working 15, 17 hours, it was just wild. And I'm like, and then finally, after a couple of months, what felt like years, off of my life, finally understanding it because of the fact that people, they weren't there to really guide. It was more so just like, hey, we don't want to have to worry about that. You go take care of it. Right. And so to your point, exactly, there's a lot of industries and areas where managers are not doing that. They're not doing the proper training for their young leaders, and they're wondering why turnover is as bad as it is.
Well, and part of it too is that they haven't had the training themselves. So we just get thrown into the fire. So you get thrown into the fire. And why do you need hand-holding? Right. And there's the opposite, where there are employees that haven't been encouraged to think on their own. And so they're often looking for, just like they look for the teacher to have the answers to the test, they're looking for the boss to have the answers to the job. And so part of leadership is also learning to say, I don't know.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yeah, exactly.
And then being quiet.
Yes.
and letting them come up with answers. And you'll quickly find out that there are people that do not want to think.
Yes.
There are people that want to be told what to do and just do it. And there are people that have different variances of what I would call commitment, but that sounds like it could be a values judgment. But there are founders are all in. We're just going to make it happen. We're going to do what it takes, and no holds barred. We're just going to figure this out. And then they hire people that aren't that way at all, and people that understand things. There are things called HR rules. And there's we have laws about breaks and, paid time off and stuff that a founder really has never thought about, because they didn't start to build an organization. They started to do a thing or sell a thing or do something.
Yes.
And so that also, it takes people in different parts of the process to be able to create a culture within an organization, even if it's a team of only a few. But it always comes back to the leader validating that. Because if the leader says, no, take the time off, be with your family, don't miss things, and then is always not taking time off and always missing family things, the employees are just going to hear the actions more than they hear the words.
You're right.
So there's got to be it's not just a one, if we just do this one thing, we'll fix everything in the organization. It's people that need to keep changing, and the change is somewhat different. It's not, some people need to be a little bit more assertive. Some people need to lay off a bit. Some
You're
people,
right.
so there's all sorts of nuance working with humans.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. And everybody learns in a different way, right? And you talk a lot about this, right? One thing I found interesting, is your focus on helping leaders work and with their, natural strengths instead of forcing like a cookie cutter style, I think is how you put it, right? So
Yep.
why do so many leaders programs miss that as well? Because it's how they want to be. Is it just simpler? Is it easier for them to just kind of go like, this is our training program?
Yeah. There is a, I got interviewed for a consulting firm, and after I had done a number of projects in the sector, and I thought, like, I had some experience and I had some judgment calls that I would make, and I knew there's different ways to get this done. There's more than one recipe to make these cookies. And I went to this place. They flew me to New York City, and I talked to the senior VP, whatever, executive VP, COO. I don't know. It was just under the CEO. And we were talking about the job, and he said, we have a box and our consultants play in this box. And I said, well, what if there's a crayon outside the box that would actually help our client? We have a box, and your job here would be to stay in this box. And I said, we're not going to get along.
Yeah.
Do you normally fly people from New England to New York City for an interview of this? Like, is this a standard practice? He said, no, it's not. We normally do this for the senior people that we want to bring in. I said, I can't do that. I'm here to serve the client, and my service will be to serve it in ways that they can keep doing it after us, not to force a box on them that may not be right.
Exactly.
So, but to get to your question, I think a good step is a leadership development program, and it's a one-size-fit-all cookie cutter. It could be one of those out-of-the-box ones that used to happen, like fish sticks or whatever. But there's got to be some level of knowing some people are different.
Yes.
And I think a part of it is we don't value diversity so much because diversity creates problems and it creates friction. And we just want, we want all the widgets to be the same. Well, we want all the employees to be the same too. And it just doesn't work that way.
Yes.
So when you start opening up and realizing whether it's DISC or Enneagram or Highlands, that people are good at different things and taking different information different way, it makes you not the victim of people's ineptitude. If people aren't responding to your verbosity,
yes,
it may be that they want it in writing.
Yeah.
And so maybe a quick text or a quick email, you might start seeing that that's the dialect of that person. And it would be easier if everybody spoke our dialect, but it's not going to happen. So we could bang our heads against the wall of everybody should be just like me, or we could work with what we've got. And the leaders that can have the space to work with what they've got tend to find out that they make better decisions and they have better product or better service because there's perspectives and other things that they didn't see. Sometimes they will reject, but at least they're choosing to reject it as opposed to just not even considering it at all.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'm not saying every company has to have this, but I actually have worked for companies who do the DISC or the Briggs, beforehand, and it's more of just a starting point, right? Like you said, and so it kind of get to lead this person for a little while, but if they act a certain way or they choose to make a decision a certain way, you can always go back to that and look at it and see, okay, this makes a little bit more sense now, right?
But I had a card for one of my CEOs, a CEO that I was hired in my after I was hired by a CEO who then announced his retirement 14 days later. I was like, I was joining you. But this new hire. So then we went without a year. And then we had a CEO who said fear is one of his management tools. Fear. Like that is not fear is my Achilles tendon. Yeah, I don't like that kind of leadership. So I had a card for DISC. And the bad thing about DISC or Myers-Briggs or others is putting people in a box. We don't want to ever put people in a box. We want to learn how, and if we're a number, letter, color, shape, we need to be able to flex and grow. So part of our challenge as a human being is to be able to speak the other dialects. But so for me, it was to be able to, I had the card and we had met weekly for a half hour. Then we met bi-weekly. He moved it down to every other week. Then he moved it down to 15 minutes. And it was finally, I realized he's a high D. He doesn't care about the details that I care about. Like I felt like I had to give him all the backstory, and he didn't
Yeah.
want that. He wanted the bullet points, and he had 300 other people that he was responsible for too. And he didn't need my, soap opera or telenovela.
Yeah.
that was so important to me and made so much sense. So, so he was using the calendar to constrain it, but I had a card, and I would be like, okay, what are the top 3 things I need to tell him? And he had tried to even help me have it. What are you doing? What do you need me to do? Where and what's coming up next was the 3 that he wanted.
Yes.
So, but I had to keep reminding, and I had to feel comfortable with, I'm leaving a lot out. There's this big iceberg, and he's not seeing anything but the very tip and nothing else. And I know all the stuff underneath it, and I've got to be okay with the fact that if he asks for it, I got it. But he doesn't need that. So. It's so challenging, but it can be really helpful though. Yes. It was helpful every other week to look at the card again and realize, all right, I may think he's a jerk, or I may think he's acting like a jerk, and he's acting very much like this particular rubric would show. Should he grow? Probably, but it's not up to me to force that. And I like my job, even though I don't, like some of the management stuff. So let me just speak the dialect.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like obviously open communication should be first and foremost, right? You should be able to communicate and talk about any issues that are going on, things like that. But I do sometimes like those structured meetings sometimes, because like a place that I had worked where we did a top 3 or a top 1, and focused on those things. And then it's like, how you're getting better. But if issues are coming up, make sure that you're saying it, because if you keep those to yourself and then the whole company blows up, but it's like, I didn't have time in the meeting. It's like, okay, we got to make sure that this is going to fall on that.
That's a huge challenge too, because time constraints. Yeah. So, and people tend to get people like me, I'll say, more verbose, tend to get really, hurt, or pouty if they're not able to say all the words. Right. And so that's part of the immaturity of my take, is like, I had to grow up and just be comfortable with pithiness. Have you seen of the direction manuals that some people are producing for themselves? Okay, so my friend Jeff Gibbard does this at the, I think, Superhero Institute. He goes into organizations, pharmaceutical companies and stuff, and helps them create kind of owner manuals for for each person. And it's Enneagram, it's problem solving, it's all sorts of different ways of looking at a person. And then it's your opportunity as people come to work with you, just saying, hey, here's some things you should know about me. It's not that they have to memorize the book, but it's just sort of like, I tend not to hear what you're saying. But if you put it in words, if you put it in writing, I got it. I'm locked in. Or I may look like I'm not paying attention. I actually am. And here's the receipts to prove it.
Right. I'm not trying to offend you. Right. It's just
right. My goal here is not to be a real jerk to you. And these are some of the things that others have found friction, and I can work on them too. But that open communication, again, so much of this stuff is, it's going slow to go fast.
It is.
It feels like I've had this vacancy for so long, and I finally have a person in the vacancy, and now I have even more longer to help them get into their up to speed. Why can't they just come in running? Because I'm already doing the job of 2 or 3 people. But knowing that, okay, there's going slow here will make it so we can go a lot faster going forward, because we'll be on the same page. We won't have grudges or hard feelings about each other. And as a leader, here, can I tell you a cool leadership story?
Absolutely.
Okay. So as a leader, if you know what's coming, like where the problems are, you can do something with them faster than if they fester. So this one place that I worked at, the VP of HR had a dumbass award. It was a Spencer Gifts statue that mooned. And what it was he said, he showed me, it was under his desk. He's like, come here, Mark, you got to see this. We were working on the Leadership Institute for the entire organization, but he was like, you got to see what I do for my team. And what they realized, one of their values was customer service. And for them, the customers are the staff. It's HR. So they wanted to know who won the dumbass award, which was going too far in pursuit of customer service. Like, when did they get like bamboozled by a staff member and they did something that they got, they were lied to and they believed it? Or when
Right.
did they take a risk and it didn't pan out? Not like embezzling funds, but
Of course.
like
Yes,
good
yes.
things in pursuit of this value.
Yeah.
So every staff meeting, Dylan, he'd go around and they'd put it in the middle and say, and then people would be saying, I think I got it this week.
Yeah.
And they'd share the story of this big screw up that they did. What he found was people came to him in the middle of the week too, saying, I think I'm going to win next week. Here's what just happened. How do we fix it? And so he was able to have that because failure wasn't seen as
Yes.
the end. It was seen as, especially the right failure in pursuit of the right goals, allowed them to be able to be a lot more responsive, and it allowed him to be able to mend things or to grow as leaders in real time, as opposed to at a artificial annual review.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It takes the monkey off the back, right? It's like you're a little bit like more free to do what you need to do. And there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be things there's outside elements that you can't control, right? And so to be able to kind of allow for that to happen, and then you make an ass of yourself, that's pretty funny, and that it's going to happen to everyone, right?
And
so
if it's your boss too, that's like, no,
Exactly.
I got it. You got it.
Right.
Don't,
Yeah.
hold my beer. I got a story for you. That
Yeah.
is real. That makes it
Yes.
a lot more real. So that's
right.
good.
Yeah, exactly. They're not sitting there fearful of making a mistake or something like that, right? And so I
Yeah.
love it. That's awesome. Well, Mark, you've also had Concord Leadership Group. It's grown from a solo operation into global coaching and training organization. What were some of the biggest lessons you learned while scaling that company?
Okay, so 3 things that immediately come to mind. One is specialization over generalization. Although I'm a generalist, I started it as fundraisingcoach.com. I could teach nonprofit fundraising, and I was good at nonprofit fundraising, and it turns out I could teach it. So all the sales stuff I had learned, I turned it. It's not the same as fundraising, but there's a lot of similarities and a lot of just behaviors and habits.
Right.
So learning the specialization, nobody wanted to know that I was specialized in this until I had a book out. And when I had the book that had the 4 steps, because I knew they were going to go through the 4 steps and say, yeah, but we're different. So your 4 steps don't apply to me. So I wanted to start there. Let's cut all the small talk and let's go right to we're different, and I'll hear that.
Yeah.
But they needed the 4-step formula. So learning that to speak the dialect of a customer to make it easier for a customer to say yes was to have them to say, okay, I can see outside verifiable proof that this is the real thing. So that was one. The second was as a solopreneur, I learned to do the thing. Bootstrapping was what I'm from New England too. You don't ask people for help. You just do it and figure it out. And that, I think, probably capped my growth for the last, I've been doing this 23 years. I think half of it was probably slower. It was almost like I was driving with the emergency brake on, because I was trying to be the expert in email marketing, and I was trying to be the expert in my different databases, and I know a little HTML and I'd taken basic back in special, things back in the 80s. The good news is I could fix things. Like I didn't have to wait for somebody else. The bad news is things needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
And it didn't always go as fast as it could have. So I think, the first one is specialization mattered, even though it felt superfluous to me, not being the person that had all the answers. And then the third was, I don't know how to put this in I'm afraid that the way I'm going to put it is going to sound pejorative. Well, I'm just going to say it. And any of you that know me that are maybe implicated by this, I still love you.
Yeah.
Nobody cares as much as you do.
Mm.
I remember when I was back in college, I got an opportunity to spend a year in Jerusalem studying. I was studying Old Testament scripture, and I was able to spend a year in Jerusalem. And my advisor told me, he looked at me and he said, you know what? I tell every student when they're going overseas, get a B instead of an A. You want to be in the culture. You want to be experiencing the things you could never experience here. Libraries look the same around the world. It's in the streets and in the clubs and in the social organizations that you're going to really get an education to. I said, but I'm going to look at, I know you, Mark. Get a C. Go for the C. And because you're going to you're like over the top trying to get excellent. So aim for a C and you'll hit that mark.
Wow.
And another mentor said, if somebody can do the things 75% or 70% as well as you, that needs to be delegated to them. So what made it good as a bootstrapper can be hindering going forward, and then can also be hindering if you're expecting that of everybody else. Not everybody is here to grow. Not everybody takes part of your services or goes to your business for the same reason. Some people just are doing like, look at gym memberships. People, you think they're going there to get healthy, but they're not. They're usually going there to make themselves feel better because they never show up again.
Right.
They just get a ding, and every time it shows up on their credit card, they feel good. Oh, I'm part of a gym as they're eating another donut.
Yeah.
So part of it is letting adults be adults. And if we have an agreement, then I'll hold people to an agreement. But I've had to be, and having brought my wife into the business the last 4 or 5 years has been really good because she's good to remind me, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the big things for me is community. I love having community. I love, peer learning and all. Most of the people I work with apparently don't value that enough to show up. And that is usually what I say, show up if you want to. And so she's like, look, that's on you. You need to let that go because you never promised community to anybody. And nobody said, I'm here because I want community.
Yeah.
They want to get something done. They want to extend their business. They want to do other things. So, it's good that you have that value, but you can't blame others for not showing up.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But how hard is it for a founder who has to start delegating, because, and not to micromanage, because the fact that you said, obviously, nobody cares as much as you do, but you don't realize that on the other side, this person might be able to do it better than I can. But at the same time, how hard is it not to micromanage?
And may enjoy doing it. Like there's stuff that I don't enjoy doing. And it was a huge reality to realize people love this.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm having to punish myself. I'm doing it because I feel like I need to punish myself and it's some sort of weird, penance or something.
Right.
So my biggest experience in that was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about green and clean, talking about expectations with his son for keeping care of the lawn, and then how he screwed up and had to own up. So for me, it was documenting practices, and I haven't been perfect with this, but it's been really helpful to take an inordinately long amount of time to screenshot. Now we can just screen record doing a task and saying, these are why. But I mean, putting it into a document of, look, we actually, it took my first VA responding to people, and it sounded like she thought they were idiots, where I had to put in there and just say, no, actually, we think our clients and prospects are super smart.
Yeah.
So we need our words to show that as well.
Right.
But it was all these things that were internal. So there's a lot of things that as a founder, we think is obvious to everybody else. Even working with my wife, there's stuff that I have to explain about why we do things. And then I also have had to let go of them because that's not really that important.
Right.
But it has to be a conversation. And so it's just like finding our values. We are always making decisions based on our values, and most of us never take the time to actually think about them or examine them. So it's the same thing with that. And I think it can be helpful having I had a friend who's been a business owner also, and we met every week for over a decade. Now we're meeting monthly on the phone, and it was just good to have somebody else to kvetch to and realize, okay, I may be wrong, but I'm not the only one that's wrong this way.
Yeah.
And we can learn this together.
Right.
So I think it's both learning to articulate what your expectations are, learning to know what are the ones that are negotiable, and also having somebody else outside the system that you can just pop off to if you need to.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The term I grew up using from leaders that had trained me was trust but verify, but then I recently had a guest on who said, he's like, we actually say trust and verify, because if you say trust but verify, it's almost like they're doing something wrong and you're checking the work to make sure they're not screwing up. Right. And so,
yeah, I've heard that and it sounded good. And I always felt like I was being second guessed or micromanaged or put into court or something.
Yes.
Yeah, it felt very punitive.
Yeah, you can do it, but I'm going to I need to make sure that it's right. So it's just, but trust and verify is just letting them kind of. I know it's semantics, but at the same time, it does play actually a pretty big role when you hear it, right?
Well, for newer leaders too that are right now at the time of this recording using your LLM tools, if you're using any of those, it's really good practice.
Yeah.
Because when the LLM doesn't get it, just pretend it's an intern that you didn't explain it clearly to, and start figuring out how do I say this differently, and how would I say this if this were a human? Not because we're humanizing AI or tech tools, but because we're learning to grow as a leader to communicate more clearly. For me, that has been really helpful. There are some areas, and I can be a little bit more maybe emotive with the tech tool that I'm usually kind. I'm usually please and thank you. But there are times where I'm like, I can blow up and it doesn't have ramifications like it would with an employee or, morale.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Test it out on them, it's yeah, and then you can even get responses back, from like say even when you're doing like your emails, right? You'd be like, "Hey, what does this sound like? What do you think the response would be from
That's
this?"
been really
Things
helpful
like
too,
that.
because
Yes,
does this have from what you know about me, is this what, does this communicate like I would want to communicate? Well,
exactly.
maybe not so much.
Yeah.
Claude has been very good to help me with that.
Yeah, exactly. But speaking of this, speaking of AI, speaking of LLMs, what's your vision for the future of leadership development over the next few years, especially as AI, automation, and technology continue changing, how people learn, communicate, and lead organizations?
I'm excited.
Yeah,
I think it could be. I am excited, and I have people around me that are reminding me of the downsides. So
yeah,
I'm not, and I'm very aware of some of the negative things that could happen with the tech tools, the AI. But what I'm excited about is, as a coach, I've only been able to coach the CEO or maybe the senior suite, and so with some of the GPT tools that I'm creating, vector databases of all my writings, I'm able to help get them out to people. Just this last week, I created for my fundraising coach side, I created all the top 10 donor objections people get, and a response, one per page, and then a response for what not to do, what the donor might be saying, what not to do, what to do, and then a AI prompt to help you figure out, like, plan for your next meeting if you think
yeah,
that's what you're going to get.
right.
So I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity for good tools. I think what it takes for those is people to also know a lot of that quadrant 2 learning stuff and quadrant 1, who's trustworthy to learn from, and what are the systems that I want to replicate, because AI is not a moral arbiter of
Right.
anything. It's just an amasser of all the stuff that's it's been trained on.
Yeah.
And so it'll still take humans to say, does this still fit with who we are? But I think a lot more people can be getting a lot more training at their own time and in their own way. Then that excites me.
Right, right. So if get this into an organization, you have your platform that you put together for leadership training. How do they differentiate from that? Because it's going to be difficult for them, right? You know that they're having to try to make these decisions on what they should be utilizing. They want to train their leaders. It's always been a lot of consultants coming in and teaching now, but obviously it's times are changing, so this is going to be a lot better. But how would they go about doing something that's going to make sure they're getting the right program, for their leaders?
It's a great question. Um, I'll say, first of all, I think it's still being worked out. But I think part of it is testing. And I think, as a good coach would say, knowing yourself too. Does this sound like something you do? Not that we would do things. I mean, we often have to do things that are new to us, and so it doesn't feel natural. But is this too bro-y for us, or is this very much how we are? Are we really bro
Yeah.
and hype and hustle culture, or are we more relaxed than that? Um, but I also like to I like to run it past 3 tools. I use Gemini, Claude, and Chat, and I run the responses past each, and they're able to poke out things, and each of them know me. I try to use it so that they all know me at a certain level too, and they're able to say, this doesn't sound like you at all, and this is
Mhm.
why, or this strategy is good, but the wording is wrong. So I think there's going to be some learning to test it, but I think it's more important to take action and maybe screw up than to wonder what if and never do it.
Yeah, exactly. I like to run them simultaneously as well because he's right. It does give the different answers, And do you tend to lean towards one of them more often than the other? Like,
Claude is the one I tend to lean to,
okay,
but the rate limits still keep getting me, which
right,
is
right.
very annoying. But yeah, Claude is my friend.
Yeah.
Gemini, it says Gemini has better strategy though, so when I'm writing stuff or planning stuff, it likes Gemini strategy better.
Really? Yeah.
And then Chat just tends to think bigger and go voluminous. So yeah, they're all 3 different. But
Right.
I've also worked for over a year now, getting my Mark voice skill and my Concord brand skills, and I have a lot of different skills that help know what I expect of it,
Mhm.
and my stories and stuff, so that I can plug it in whatever. So if one of them goes down, I'm not going to be totally stranded.
Right, right. No, I
That's
love
the
that.
goal anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Awesome, Mark. Well, I do appreciate you joining today. I know we're close to time. I didn't even recognize that until just now. But, I did want to ask you, for listeners who want to connect with you, learn more about
Mm.
Concord leadership. I know we didn't get to talk about your book very much, but The Surprising Gift of Doubt. What's the place for them to go to do so? Connect with you and also pick up their copy.
The Wherever fine books are served
Okay.
is usually where the surprising gift of doubt can be found. I tried to make myself ridiculously easy to find. So Mark with a C, Pitman, P as in Peter, Itman. Um, But Concord Leadership Group is where everything, CONCORD Leadership Group is where everything resides. The other sites are linked to that. And LinkedIn is where, LinkedIn and Threads are where I'm most responsive, but LinkedIn particularly.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure those are in the show notes as well and make it a little easier on the listeners. And again, Mark, I do really appreciate you joining today and spending time with me and the listeners.
Could I share one tool that people could try?
Absolutely.
If you for just 2 or 3 minutes of your time, there's a leadership style quiz on concordleadershipgroup.com/style that will show you 4 different university verified types of leadership: transformative, transactional, charismatic, or servant. And you can see what your natural bent is in leadership, what your natural style is. And it's been helpful for people for the last few years to be able to see also there are other choices. And maybe I'm not getting the results I want because I'm leaning too much into my preferred style. Maybe I need to try this other style in this particular case.
Yes.
So
amazing tool. Yeah, I'll make sure that is also in the show notes. And for anybody who's listening, please make sure you guys are checking that out. And again, Mark, I do appreciate you joining today, man.
Thanks so much for having me.